Welcome to a special festive season episode of Rise and Thrive Conversations for Greatness, where we delve into personal growth, motivation, inspiration, and the secrets of success. I'm your temporary host for this week, Aaron Holesgrove. Today, we have a remarkable guest on the show. He is a transformation specialist, highly skilled as an enterprise leader, delivery manager, product owner, and change manager. In the workplace, he is the master of facilitation and training, working with agility at scale, a visionary servant leader, and has one of the most endearing smiles you'll ever endure in the office. He's also a keynote speaker and master of ceremonies, a musician, affectionately known as Johnny Rockstar. He's an entrepreneur. He's created and managed several businesses in the past, and currently he's the creator and publisher of the Fluid Reality Meditation series, an app with 10 different meditations to help you transform your mindset and your life. He's a dedicated husband and father, and if that wasn't enough to keep the guy busy, he's also the host of a fantastic weekly podcast, you may have heard of it, called Rise and Thrive Conversations for Greatness, being the positive change guy, and can certainly challenge John Laws as the new golden tonsils of the airwaves in Australia. John Merkus, welcome to the show.
Aaron, you're a freaking legend, and thank you for that summary of my life. Makes me think, no wonder I feel like I'm really alive with all that going on, that's for sure.
So before we dive in, Johnny, do you want to sort of let the listeners in on the little ruse that's happening right now?
Yeah, so we're doing a bit of a role swap, and Aaron, you would have heard on the show with a couple of episodes giving us his gold and the things that he's learned through his personal development and his journey. There's so much gold to be had, so please look up Aaron's episodes and have a listen. But Aaron wanted to host the show, and I couldn't think of anyone better. It's the first time we've done this. I couldn't think of anyone better because he epitomizes conversations for greatness and rising and thriving. He said, Johnny, why don't I interview you and you'll get a chance to let the listeners know more about yourself, because as the host, I'm more about the guests and making them comfortable and teasing the gold out of them for our Rise and Thrivers. And I'll add a few things here and there, and I've got a couple of solos, but I haven't been interviewed yet on my own show, on some other podcasts I have, including a menopause one, believe it or not, the men's perspective on menopause. So that was quite an interesting one. But I love speaking, so if I'm invited, I will most often 99,000 times out of whatever the number is, I will say yes.
Yeah, see, I'm a dedicated listener of the show, as well as someone that's been interviewed a few times, and I've been listening from the beginning. And I had that thought, John, that you're such a great interviewer, and people get a sense of your personality through the questions that you ask. But I thought, wouldn't it be fascinating if your listeners got a chance to get to know you a bit about your past and your mindset and what gets you into this headspace of being, the Johnny Rockstar that we've been slightly getting to know through all your questions. So I thought this would be a good sort of end of year thing to do, celebrating the first year of Rise and Thrive Conversations for Greatness with the ultimate guest, right?
Thank you, mate. That's really nice of you to say. And I always say this as a joke, but we're going to talk about my favorite subject, which is me.
Well, all right, Johnny, let's get into this.
All right.
Now, I think the burning question that the listeners of this show would be dying for me to ask first is this. Is Star Trek better than Star Wars, or do you not really care?
Nice. Well, I know you're a sci-fi fan, and so I'm not surprised by that question. I am was a bit of a Doctor Who fan back in the day when Tom Baker was Doctor Who, so that's my sci-fi experience. I like Star Wars and Star Trek, so I'm not wedded to either one. That was the question, wasn't it? Star Wars, Star Trek?
Yeah, which one's better? You got to pick one.
Oh, yeah, okay, I'm happy to. I watched the first few movies when they came out, and then I wasn't really a Star Wars kind of guy, but then I had a son who actually turns 15 today.
Yeah.
He wanted to watch the series, so I thought, what a great father-son thing to do, to watch all the movies together. And we did it in not the not the timing of when they came out, but the order of the, what am I trying to say? From 1 to 10, but in the order where the timeline is a linear timeline, not
Yeah.
jumping
Okay.
all over
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
place.
Not the order that they were released.
Yeah. So we watched that. Great experience. Really enjoyed the doing it that way and having that experience with my son. When I was a kid, my brother and I used to watch Star Trek together on TV with Captain Kirk. We love
William Shatner.
That's it. Thank you. There's a really good joke about William Shatner as well because of his surname. But anyway, love a bit of William Shatner. And I really enjoyed the Star Trek kind of moral of the story. So that really resonated with me because there's a bit of psychology behind each episode, a real moral to the story, which I enjoyed. And then semi-recently, I thought, you know what? I've never seen the first 5 episodes of Star Trek with William Shatner when they came out. So I started watching them. And sure, the visual effects aren't as, as what you would expect from the 60s, but that same moral to the story shining through from the very beginning. So I love the writing. I'm a William Shatner fan. And so I'd have to say, if I had to pick, I've got the Star Wars memories of watching it all with my son, which I love. But I just love that moral of the story stuff with Star Trek. So if I had to pick, I'd have to say Star Trek.
Ooh, nostalgia wins. Wow, that's a controversial choice.
And a very long answer to a short question.
It was, yeah.
It's going to be a 5-part episode.
So, Johnny, what inspired you to become the positive change guy? And what does that title mean for you?
Thanks. Great question. I get this from my dad. So from it's part of it. There's more to it. But when I've thought about this myself, it's like, why am I like this? Because not everyone's like this. Why am I like this? As a kid, I got exposed to some personal development principles really early. I'm talking primary school age, 7 or 8. I'm the youngest of 4 kids. My father worked for the Shell Oil Company back in the day, and he got put through some training through his work, and he shared some of those things. And we'd be at a family dinner with everyone at the family, and my dad would say, the best thing you can do is stand in front of the mirror and say, I'm the greatest. And because he was taught, I think it was a Dale Carnegie seminar series, actually, that you're the leader in the mirror. So you lead your life, you lead your experiences, you lead your thoughts. You're responsible for the life that you create, often by your thoughts, of course, by your actions. My brothers and sister and even my mum probably had a bit of a chuckle and went, oh yeah, that's really good, Dad. But I really loved it. And so I tried it, and it elevated my state of mind just by doing that exercise. So as a kid, I was thinking, wow, there's something in this. I find it interesting as well because at school, I did not like reading books. I just didn't. I was a slow reader. I found it difficult. I didn't want to do it. As an adult, though, I started becoming an avid reader, and I've got bookshelves behind me with many, many personal development books, whether it be Dale Carnegie's classic How to Win Friends and Influence People, whether it be Dr. Wayne Dyer, Pull Your Own Strings. Deepak Chopra's in there. Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. Brian Tracy's in there. James Redfield's in there. So I got exposed to these personal development and sometimes spiritual principles that really resonated with me. And I don't know why, but there's 2 things that happen to me when I get exposed to a new idea. Firstly, I see how I can apply that in my life and usually love it. And my very next thought is, I need to share this with people. People need to know this. The world and people will be a better place if we adopted some of these ways of thinking, like it's better to be kind than right. That has been a relationship game changer, especially for my marriage.
Yeah.
and my business and personal relationships as well. So that's just one of the things. That's just an example of I get exposed to an idea like that. It's like, oh, it's better to be kind than right. And then I adopt that in my life. I see the results by thinking that way. And I just want to share it with everyone. So that's how my journey was and how it came about being the kind of person that I am. And if you ask me and say, well, John, why is it that you want to share it with everyone? I don't know. It just happens in me.
Yeah.
And it's not it's not because of my ego. There may be part of that in there. Sure, I'm a human being. When I was in the 90s in the audience of a seminar with Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, all those people that I spoke about, I was at a seminar, all-day seminar there with them. I was sitting in the audience and it was like there was nobody else there. And I was listening to these speakers and my epiphany was, that's me on stage. I need to be doing this. This is what I'm born to do. I'm the one. And that's what I say about the ego, right? Because it sounds a bit egotistical when you say, I'm the one. And for me, it's about stepping up, being that leader, creating value for people, and doing the best I can with this small slice of time that I've got in terms of, I believe that there was millions of years before I got here. And I think the
Yeah.
universe will continue on for millions of years after I leave. So I've got a very small slice of time. So what am I going to do with my slice of time? And luckily for me, it's really clear what I need to be doing with my slice of time.
Yeah, so I can resonate with that. Like, I'm hearing a bit of neuro-linguistic programming in what you were describing earlier. Yeah, because there is that process that, yeah, your conscious mind can tell your unconscious mind, like, this is what my belief system's going to be, or this is how I'm going to interpret what I'm hearing or what I'm receiving, so that you store it in your brain with that in mind, with that belief system attached to it. Yeah, like, yeah, say, like, if you're someone who got punched up or something in a fight, and you're thinking to yourself like, "Oh, I'm feeling sorry for myself that I got assaulted." Well, yeah, you can also tell yourself, "Well, I'm someone who survived an attack and then recovered from it and then came back even stronger." Yeah, you can tell yourself that, and then that's how you're going to remember it in your brain. So I can hear what you're saying there with what your dad taught you about looking in the mirror.
Another thing that I've learned that I always love to share, and I say it often, is alongside with that goes that everything happens to me for a reason and that it serves me, because you either win or you learn. And so if you have a mindset of everything that happens to you for a reason and that it serves you, anything can come your way. And with that kind of mindset, you can really achieve great results. You cannot let things get you down as much as they could. It's like, I don't know why this is happening. I don't know
Yeah.
why my role at an amazing company got made redundant. So I'm looking for a job. I don't know why, but it's going to serve me in some way, shape, or form. Let's see what the future holds. Now the thing is, I don't know if that's the truth for sure, right? But I make it my truth because I'm making up stories about stuff that happens to me every day. So why not make up an empowering story that serves you? And I find that becomes my truth because that's my mindset.
Yeah, it's amazing. And like, yeah, when you're talking about the famous people that you've seen hosting seminars and all that, I know that one thing I've observed is that the one thing they all have in common, there's a lot of genuine joy in them doing that and sharing their knowledge and their soft skills with others. And I think a bit of that sort of plays into it too.
Yeah, I think if you ask me who my number one inspiration is, it would have to be Dr. Wayne Dyer, because that guy, apart from he's got a great voice,
Yeah,
he can speak without notes. Well, he used to be. He's no longer with us. He's kind of with
yeah,
us, but no longer on this physical plane. And he could speak to an audience for, say, 45 minutes, deliver gold value, not using any notes, deliver with humor, deliver with passion. And just the ease that he had in doing that was so inspiring. And I think when I saw that and thought, wow, that is amazing. That's me.
yeah. That's fantastic. So, John, you've worked in diverse industries, right?
Mm.
Let's sort of go back in time a bit. Like, can you give the listeners a sense of how your career has progressed since the 80s?
Yeah, sure can. In terms of my work life and my school life, actually, I went to I got to go way back here, and you mentioned the 80s. And so I went to school in the 80s. I went to high school in the 80s,
Mm,
and I went to a tech school. Tech school
mm,
is really for if you want to be a builder, a plumber, or those kind of trades. That's really built for that. You do woodwork and machine shop practice and all this kind of stuff. And I thought I wanted to be a builder. Funnily enough, when I was at primary school, I was thinking I want to be an air steward because I love travel. I wanted
yeah.
to either be in the army because for some reason, got a affinity with that kind of side of life, or a builder. So I thought I'll go to Sandringham Technical College, which was close to where I lived at the time. I used to ride my bike to school every day and back. That doesn't really happen a lot these days for kids, but we did
Mm,
it. And I realized very quickly that I didn't really have a lot of talent in that area, and I didn't have a lot of desire, because
mm,
instead of making things that I thought was kind of a creative, it was all about measuring things and being precise. And so it was really good that I got that insight into that. That's not something that I want to do with my life ongoing, but I'm glad I got some skills out of that. The funny thing is, when you don't end up doing trade kind of work at a technical school, you end up in I did applied science in year 10, so because I love
yeah.
science. So that was amazing to get that. And then instead of continuing applied science for year 11, I did business studies. And it was in that year 11 class that I learned to touch type, a skill that has been with me ever since. And I use every day as one of the best skills I've ever learned to set me up for the rest of my life. So it's really
Mm,
interesting how life takes you. And so then they didn't offer year 12. So you used to have to go to another school to complete year 12. I
okay.
went to that school, and in the first week of orientation, most teachers said to us something like this: look around. 2/3 of you aren't going to be here by the end of the year. I went,
Okay.
geez, that's not really motivating. And so I've gone from this school that was definitely more nurturing and more personal to one that was impersonal. It's like, most of you aren't going to be here next year. And it was bigger, and I couldn't really find my place there, let's say.
Yeah, okay.
So halfway through, I left. Yeah, so I didn't finish my year 12. But what I did do, I thought, if I'm not going to continue with my studies, by the way, if I had my time again, I would have gone to university, but that's a whole other thing. What if? But I'm really happy how it's turned out. So I thought a good career move and a solid job back then was working for a bank. So I applied to all the banks. I'm not going to finish my year 12, but I can maybe start in the business world by working at a bank. I applied for 3 banks and I got all 3 jobs. So I was really happy with that. So I got to choose. I started working for a bank and I thought, wow, this is so different to how I envisaged work.
Yeah. And why's
Uh,
that?
well, a couple of things. Firstly, back then we were smoking cigarettes in the office
Right.
at the bank.
It's the 80s, yeah.
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 On a Friday afternoon, we'd all go to the pub for lunch. Right. Oh, right. There's people having beers and wines in the middle of the day on a Friday, and then they're going back to work. So that just was a big eye opener about how the world is actually working. That's just a couple of aspects of it. But I found it that I loved learning everything that I was learning about how things were operating, but I actually found it easier than school.
Yeah, okay.
From there, I went to the Australian Stock Exchange and worked in their finance department.
Yeah, okay.
And that was an amazing experience. Back then, the stock exchange had chalky. So they had guys, back then it was only guys, writing up
Mhm.
the share prices on a blackboard as all that stuff was getting called out. So, like what you see in the New York Stock Exchange,
Yeah.
they're yelling all the time. That's what the Melbourne Stock Exchange floor was like. And so those chalkies would be writing up those prices all the time. And that was a pathway for them to become stockbrokers. So that was what they were doing. But I was in the finance department for the actual stock exchange, which was also mind-blowing. I did many jobs there in the accounting and finance area. At one time, I was looking after their money market, right? So there would be volumes of term deposits that come to maturity, and I have to ring up all the banks and get the best rate. So I would be ringing up banks. What am I, 18 years old, ringing up banks saying, I've got a $2 million term deposit coming to maturity, and I'm looking for the best rate. What's your rate today? So I'd do that with 5 or 6 different banks, and then the best bank would win. I'd go ring them back and go, yep, we're going to deposit that with you for 6 months, whatever. So these were the directions that I was given from the accountant. It's like, this is maturing. We're going to reinvest it for 6 months or whatever. But I'd do the legwork. Once a year, the biggest one matured, $32 million. This is back in 1987, right? So that's a lot of money. It was a lot of money now, but imagine that. All the banks wanted it. And I wasn't allowed to say what the other banks had quoted as the rate. So, but a few asked me, but I didn't. And then the State Bank of Victoria won it, and I used to work for them, so that was quite interesting. That was my first job in banking. And then I had to write up all the checks, get them signed by the CEO, who everyone was scared of, but I wasn't. We always had great banter. I don't know why. Maybe I was good at rapport building even back then. So I'd take the check, exchange all the checks, and do all that. And at the bank where the $32 million term deposit is maturing, so they've got to write me a check so I can deposit it with the bank again.
Right.
And the lady says to me, who should I make it out to?
You had a choice.
For a split second,
I
I thought John Merkus would be good. But of course, I didn't want to be up for fraud of $32 million. So I didn't mind the idea of being famous, but not for that, or infamous, not for that. Yeah. So that was some of my experience in the finance world. But I had an affinity for the computer systems there. I couldn't get into the IT department of the Australian Stock Exchange. So what I did was I left and went back to study. I left my job and went back to study. And at the Computer Power Training Institute, I did a 6-month diploma course in computer programming. And I really, really enjoyed that. And I got 95% as average through that whole course. I started working in IT as a programmer. They say developer now, but as a programmer.
Yeah.
Then I ended up becoming a shareholder and a director of the company that I worked for 2 years later.
Wow, okay. Yeah.
And then a year after that, we became a bona fide Microsoft service provider. So I not only had a 25% stake in an IT organization, we were then had the kudos of a Microsoft service provider as well. And I was only 23 then. So by luck, fortune, hard work, mindset, I don't know what it is because I was really too young to just know. I just went for whatever I was in for.
Yeah.
I was a shareholder and a director of a multi-million-dollar company that was a Microsoft service provider, and I was 23 years old. So from there, we ended up selling that company because there was a lot of chiefs and not enough Indians. Oh, that's not politically correct. There was too many cooks spoiling the broth, so to speak. The leadership was very heavy at the top, and we kind of leaned down the bottom. And we didn't have
money's nice too.
The money was great, and I didn't have agile ways of working. I didn't have any of that, right? So we'll talk about that in a bit, I'm sure. But then I thought, what am I going to do with my life? Well, I loved IT, and I did a little bit more development after that. Then I did some IT training, and I went, wow, I love this people side of this business. So I can still be in IT, and I can have interactions with people and make a difference to them because they think often they think the systems are great because it's usually an improvement. And then I realized if I want to be part of projects, I need to be a change manager So you're looking after the entire project, the people side of change
Yeah.
for the entire project, not just the training part, which is the middle part of change. So I got myself certified, and then I was in the corporate world for 20 years doing change management. And all the personal development stuff that I was doing really fed in beautifully to that, about rapport building, about mindset, about accepting change, about the emotional states of that people go through with any kind of change, whether it be business or whether it be personal. So I really love that crossover between the business and the personal side of life. Because as you know, because we've worked together, Aaron, I'm the same guy, whether you're working with me or whether you're coming to my house for a cup of coffee. I don't have this
Yeah.
different mask that I wear at work. From there, then I've expanded into the keynote speaking, the authoring of a couple of books, the recording of doing the podcast. And that's my way of being able to express myself, make a difference, and continue walking the path of what I really think I'm put here to do. And so 2024 has been exciting. 2025 is going to blow my mind, and I'm sure everyone else's, which with a lot of things that we've got in the pipeline for next year.
Yeah, there's some twists and turns there that you had
Oh
there
my
in your
God.
early 20s. That I wasn't. I know I've read about you on LinkedIn and we've been friends for a while, but I didn't even know that. That's quite interesting. And when you sort of got off the tools and started doing change management, I know that you're working for multiple state and federal government departments and multiple telcos and stuff like that. So you've really seen the workforce at action at an enterprise level and a government level. So given that you've seen and done everything in your career to date, what do you believe is like the key to driving positive transformation in any organization?
I think the key to driving positive transformation is having the leadership on board with what's happening. If you
Yeah.
try and drive transformation from the bottom up, it's possible, but it's a harder slog than if it comes from the top down and the bottom up and you can meet in the middle. I've worked for lots of organizations where they're going through change, and I try to access the senior leadership to instill this kind of principle. It's the number
Yeah.
one reason in change management speak and in the framework that I'm familiar with. I do research every 2 years and publish it. Well, they do surveys ongoingly, but every 2 years they publish their research, and they've been doing that for the last 15 years. And the number one reason why projects and transformations succeed or fail is lack of executive sponsorship.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that's where if a senior leader delegates that or says, I've got people for that, I'm too busy, that they can do it. Because people like their leaders to be leading and explain to them, I'm a leader in this organization. We're doing this. Why are we doing this? What's in it for me? All the things. They want to hear that at a senior level. It's a bit like in government as well. You want to hear from your prime minister or your president, and then when they
Yeah.
say, and
Yeah.
then they're on board, you go, okay, I understand what's going on. You don't even necessarily have to agree with it, but there's something there for human beings that when leadership explains what's happening and why, it seems to make more sense and we're more easily on board with and going through that transformation. Doesn't mean there won't be challenges, but that's the number one. There's plenty of others, but that's the number one reason why I think transformation in business succeeds or fails. And so I've had to coach C-level people and explain this to them, and they get it when it's explained, and that's really important. The thing that we're always grappling with is they're very time poor, and
Yeah.
sometimes they can see this as something else that's going to take their time. But what my job is to support them and make it easy for them. As an example, I've written speeches, key messages, things like that, that I will give to a senior leader. They'll review it and then they'll go with it. So I've make it as easy as I can for people to be able to communicate in the most effective way. So it's just an example, one of many.
Yeah, I can really understand that because I know that people want to feel like they're a part of something greater than themselves, and really that the team is greater than the sum of its parts. That you're working towards a vision. Like I know I've worked in jobs where like I've had a boss where I haven't heard from him in weeks. and I start to feel dismayed about my job, because I wasn't getting any good feedback, and I wasn't sort of getting the reaffirmation that this is great, this is getting us towards the vision, the long term goal. I'm seeing that come to fruition, and to remind you all, this is what the outcome is that we're working towards, and those sorts of things make all the difference in the world.
It's really good you mentioned the vision. So that's a more succinct way of summarizing what I just said. If you have a vision that you can see and you can get on board with, it makes such a difference. The other thing that I've learned as well is businesses have visions and vision statements and stuff like that, but individuals need that as well. So I would challenge our listeners to say, what's your vision statement? What are you heading towards? Now, if you need help with that, of course, we can help you with that. But it's really important to have a personal vision statement. Well, personal and it's really important to have a vision statement to know where you're heading. Would you like to know mine?
Sure. Yeah, let's hear it.
So the vision for my business, which is the John Merkus business of empowering people and personal development, is to deliver transformative content and experiences that empower individuals and organizations to embrace change and follow their dreams and live the best life they possibly can. And I do it through keynote speaking, workshops, podcasts, creative initiatives. So I want to demystify some of these complex concepts and make them accessible to everyone. In this ever-changing world, I want people to be rising and thriving, and hopefully I can be part of their journey as well to help them rise and thrive quicker than what they might have without.
Love it. So you've really got it all together at this point.
It looks that way. I'm not saying that I do though, but it can look that way. But I face the same challenges that everybody else does. I might have a bigger toolkit to be able to manage some of those things that come along. But I'm certainly human, and I can get frustrated at things, and then I have to manage myself. When I'm is a big one that I learned from a book called Return to Love by Marianne Williamson, which is one of my favorite books, and it's her experience doing the Course in Miracles, which is a whole other topic, but that's a transformation course that she did, and she wrote a book about it, and I read her book. I haven't done the Course in Miracles. Got the book, but I have not done that yet. In that, she had to deal with frustration and anger based on some childhood issues that she had, and she used to recognize if she was getting frustrated and say to herself, either out loud or internally or both, I'm angry, but I'm willing not to be. Please show me what I'm not seeing now. That is so powerful and blew my mind. That's another one of those ones going, everyone needs to know this. And the thing about it is when you are angry or frustrated, it's probably the last thing you want to do. But if you are committed to not being that way, and sometimes you might not be. Sometimes if you're frustrated and angry, you might say, look, I'm frustrated and angry, and I'm just going to be with it and ride it out. And I'm happy to go down that path. Or you might have the awareness to go, look, I'm frustrated and angry. I really don't want to be. I've got a lot of things that I want to do today, or things that I want to achieve, and I've got to knock this on the head. So having a kind of mantra like, I'm angry and I'm willing not to be, you're telling your conscious and your subconscious and the universe and the world, I'm angry, but I'm willing not to be. Show me what I'm not seeing now, because it will be something that you're not seeing or appreciating or realizing that is causing that frustration.
It's good stuff. I love it.
It's just stuff I've learned that because I've done the personal development work, and it's just really, I feel like I'm a broken record, but I'm so inspired to share it, and I'm really rapt that you're giving me the opportunity, Aaron, to go for it.
It's all good. Yeah, if you could think back to the 18-year-old Johnny Merko, out of high school, do you think you'd be anywhere near where you are now in terms of your experience, your breadth of expertise, and the lives that you've affected with your work?
No, I would have never thought that. Back in those days, I thought actually you were going to say, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
That's coming later.
Yeah, cool. Well, no, I would have never thought this. And that's, I think, the beauty of life, because if you knew what your destiny was, it wouldn't be as exciting as not knowing.
Yeah.
And that way you can create it. You get the ultimate palette to color in yourself. And no, I would have thought, as an 18-year-old, I would have thought that I'm going to do something in business. I don't know what, but I really enjoyed the thought of me being a businessman and being successful in the corporate world, because that's, I guess I got that from my dad. My dad also was in local politics and was the mayor of Sandringham twice. So I got to see him speaking and make a difference to
Yeah.
his community. He also got an Order of Australia for his community work. So I had,
Wow.
yeah, so I had a really good role model in my father. And also, I can't mention my dad without mentioning my mum, who was an absolute, I'm struggling to find the words, because no words really describe her well enough to communicate, in that she was the most supportive oracle of information, amazing listener. I guess a lot of sons would say that about her mothers. I've only had one, so I can't compare, and I don't want to compare. I just know that my mum gave me the best life I could possibly have, and so I attribute where I am today to both my parents, my
Mm.
dad for the leadership kind of skills and giving back, but also my mother, because she did exactly the same. And she, in some of the things that she did, she was just so selfless. Back when my father was mayor for the first time, there was no catering team, anything like that. And there was all these dinners and everything. So my mum would sometimes cook for 30 people in a small kitchen in the house, take it all to the event, and make sure everyone was fed in an appropriate way, and in a kind of formal way as well. That's just one of the things that she did to be so supportive. So having that, my father would have not been anything without his wife supporting him like that. And I guess I get to see that as a son. And she was also selfless and so supportive of me. And there's one of the sayings that I've shared before, but I always like to share. She used to say, and she used to mess up her sayings as well, which is quite funny. She used to say that the fence is always greener on the other side. And we knew what she meant, because they migrated from the Netherlands in 1952. English was the second language. And if we had a power failure, Mum would say the power fell out, because that's the direct translation in Dutch to the same event. But she always used to say, it's not time to worry until it's time to worry. And the thing is, John, right now it's not the time to worry. And she would give me that advice when I was, because I'm a bit of a warrior, and so is my son, which is
Mm.
interesting. I suppose we all are, but and she would give me that advice, and it would comfort me so much. And I still use it today. If I can pull myself up and going, you're worrying about things that might be out of your control, and now's not the time to worry. So there's probably a lot of psychology behind all of that we could go through and research. But as a lovely Dutch Australian lady, she would say to her son, John, it's not time to worry until it's time to worry, and now's not the time to worry. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't even know if I
fantastic.
answered your question, but I'm just on a roll here.
That's great. I got far more than I bargained for, but it's fantastic. It's interesting to hear about your history.
Thanks, mate.
Let's pull you into the present.
Mm.
So yeah, in the intro, I talked about how you're a motivational speaker, an entrepreneur, a podcast host, and a family man. How do you balance all of this, man?
I love it all, so that helps.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
never a slog. I'm never thinking, oh, damn, I've got to edit that podcast episode, or, oh, crap, I've got to go to my son's basketball game, or, I'm loving it all. So that helps a lot.
yeah,
And it reminds me of a saying that I've heard before, was instead of I've got to do something, I say, I get to do it. And that
yeah,
philosophy really works for me. But I feel that way anyway. It's like, oh, wow, because, I never thought I'd be married or have a family, and I do. So it's really, which I'm very happy about. And so it's really, I get to do this kind of stuff, which is really juicy, and I love that in life. And I've forgotten the question. Oh no, how do I juggle it all? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do the best I can every day with what I've got. That's it. And I either win or I learn. I go to bed at night and I think of at least 3 things that I'm grateful for. And then I get up in the next morning and away I go again. And I need to have a bit of a more of a plan and structure to that, which I'm challenged by and learning at the moment. I do the best I can with what I've got every day, and the cherry on top of that, and for those others that do have the same philosophy, don't beat yourself up about what you didn't do, because I heard this as well early on in my personal development journey. You're going to die and you're still going to have items in your inbox. So it's never going to be clear. So don't beat yourself up, because then when you think it, and you're at night or whatever, you're going to bed and you think, oh, you don't want to be, you could be thinking, oh, I should have done this, should have done that, whatever. And then you stop and you think, what did I actually do? I went, oh, wow. I did a podcast interview, wrote up this. I recorded a meditation for my app. I reached out to 3 other people. I had a conversation with my friend and made a difference to him. I spoke to my life coach and she made a difference to me. You stop and think all the things that just happened in that 24-hour period. You go, mate, you did a lot, and that's enough for today.
Yeah.
Have a good sleep, look after your body and your mind, and get up and do it again tomorrow. So that's my philosophy. I guess how I'm thinking about the question, how I manage it, is with that kind of mindset that I've just been explaining to you.
So I think, because if I'm going to play that back, it's really sort of like you've given yourself a lot of options to get exposed to a lot of the goodness in life, and then just grab life by the balls and do whatever you can do every day to live life to the max, and then just get up and do it again every day, right?
That's it. Have a vision. Have a plan. I love goals because I'm just re-listening to the book by Dr. Maxwell Maltz called Psycho-Cybernetics, where he talks about that we are goal-orientated machines as human beings, whether we like it or not, and whether we actually set it for ourselves or not. Our propensity as human beings is to still go for a goal, whatever that is. Still have those goals and dreams, but you've also got to have that balance between going where life takes you as well. But the funny thing is, when you improve your mindset, when you take the action, so the universe loves action. Right? And sitting around thinking is important, but that action as well and the mindset that you have while you're acting is all important. And that's what allows you to achieve the things that you want in your life. And it's not all woo-woo manifestation stuff that doesn't work. It actually works when you combine your mindset and your action and a goal or a vision. It works. That's how all the achievers do it.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to me, and it's working in my life.
I'm seeing that it is. So let's talk about this podcast for this to be some good meat on the bone. Would you be able to share a moment where, you can remember thinking to yourself, I can't believe this is happening on my podcast? What do you reckon?
Yeah, there's been a few of those. Some of the guests that I've interviewed and gone, oh, wow, I can't believe I'm talking to Victor Perkins, known as the Optimistic Man, and all the wonderful guests I've had. That's so inspiring. And I often think to myself, if I didn't have my podcast, I wouldn't be having these conversations, let alone sharing that with others so others can. But I benefit so much from having these conversations. So it's really works for me. I did some radio back in the day. I won't say the year, but it was with a local radio station, 3SA. They used to say, with 3SA, we're playing favourites. I loved the idea of being a DJ on the radio. And my IT career and all, and I had the business back then, the Microsoft solution provider business. So that was, I couldn't really jump ship and then become a DJ there. Well, I could have, but I chose not to. Let's say it how it really is. And so I always had this in the back of my mind that I'd love to be a talk show host and I'd love to have my own radio show. Through time and technology improvements, you actually can. You can create it yourself now, where in the past,
you sure can.
You would have been at the mercy of other organizations and other technology, where now as you said before, you can grab life by the balls and go, I want to have a podcast. I'm going to make it happen. And with a little bit of information and some desire, you can have your own show. And so that was super inspiring to me. The first time I saw my icon come up on Apple and Spotify as a podcast, I just went, holy crap, that's me. This is accessible to billions of people in the world. I haven't been accessed by billions, but I've been accessed by over 45 countries, which blows my mind. So people have heard me in 45 countries. That's also mind blowing as well. When I hear people like yourself and others that say, John, I heard this episode and I love this, or I'm a friend of the show, I'm an avid listener of the show and I love the content and I get so much out of it. That also blows my mind. The other day I was speaking to a friend of mine. He just happened to be in the car with his son. He put me on loudspeaker and he said, John, I've got Jack in the car with me. And I know his son is 14 or 15.
Yeah.
He said he's an avid listener to the show. Blows my mind there's a 14, 15-year-old kid out there that's listening to my weekly podcast because he's getting so much out of it and getting it at such a young age. And that really inspires me because like what I was talking about before, when I was exposed to these principles at an early age, it really set me up for success in later life. And so, just another example of a mind-blowing moment. And shout out to you, Jack, son of Mattstar. That's his gaming handle, Mattstar. So I'm not giving away any too much personal information, but shout out to you, Jack. You're awesome. You're a friend of the show, and I love it. And I hope you're getting heaps out of this episode and all the other ones.
Unreal. Do you think you've become a different person yourself, like since starting the show?
Absolutely.
Yeah? What's that?
Well, I could really tell when I had that break between season 1 and season 2, it felt like there was something missing. And sure, I had a little bit more time because I wasn't recording interviews, and I needed a break. So I'm glad that I took the break. But I had this feeling in the background that there's something missing. When I got season 2 up again, and we had the resilience revolution kind of theme for season 2. Learned heaps through that, and it was great to get back on the horse. And now with season 3, back interviewing guests, it just feels so right. So I know that I have, because there's something missing when I don't. The other thing as well is I have these wonderful interviews, then I edit them. I edit them by hand on purpose because I just feel that that's, for me, that's the best way to do it. So then I hear all the gold again.
Yeah.
And then if I'm making little short videos or transcripts or quotes from the guests or whatever, I get that gold again. So I'm being exposed to this wonderful information and these principles and these people on a regular basis. And there's a great saying, show me who you're hanging around with and I'll show you where you'll be in 5 years. It's really, I found that the case in way before I had the podcast, but I have increased the amount of great people that I'm hanging around with through the podcast. So it's making a massive, massive, massive difference to my life going through the process. And I also listen to the episodes in the car as well, because I want to hear from my guests again, because they give so much away and so much gold. I'll go, oh yeah, I remember that interview with Aaron, and we talked about all this wonderful stuff. I'm listening to Aaron today in the car. I've got half an hour. That's also feeding into my soul again. I can't help not be affected in a positive way by the podcast, and that's my wish for everyone that's listening right now, or that's ever listened, even if you've only ever listened to a five minutes of one episode. I'm just so happy that this is out in the world and it's making a difference to me, and I hope it makes a difference to you too.
So it sounds like you're really sort of building your own personal repository of advice and excellence. And whenever you're thinking of something that you want some reinforcement, it's like, I remember when I spoke to XYZ person about that. Flick on that episode. But I'm also sort of hearing it's like it's become muscle memory for you now, that this is a part of your life. It's not just what you do, it's who you are, such to the extent that you missed it when you weren't doing it for a while in between seasons. So I guess
it's a good summary. You've put it in a perfect way. Thanks.
So I guess is there any like particular life lessons that you can remember that you've learned yourself from the guests on the show? Like if you could say pick one or two.
There's heaps of lessons that I've learned. If I ever would need inspiration about keeping going in the face of uncertainty and doubt, Emily Perkins springs to mind. Her story about how she wanted to be a dance teacher with a dance studio, and everyone said, "You're too young, you shouldn't do it. Why are you doing it? You're never gonna be." Well, I don't know if they said you're never gonna be any good at it, but she was not getting encouragement. She wanted a particular dance studio set up and had the perfect opportunity to, missed out on the auction. Lots of reasons behind that. So she's almost dying inside, hearing her dreams go up in smoke with this particular venue and this thing, and then things happen to her, and the world moves and turns in a way that she eventually, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, she eventually realizes her dreams exactly how she envisaged them. And so she had so much conviction that even sitting at an auction or being at an auction where the exact premises where you're going to operate out of one day is about to be sold, still having that conviction, and she ends up being there in that premises and running a successful business that makes a difference to many, many children. She says dance is the language of the soul. She makes such a difference to people doing what she loves. I love those stories about when people just go for it. I want to do this, and go for it and live their dream. So that one stands out. That one stands out a lot. I love, and not just because you are interviewing me, but I love our episodes a lot because because we're both big on personal development. We just have this personal, and you come really prepared with all the models and the acronyms and the stories, and that is just absolute gold. So I love those as well. Thank you for bringing that to the show. And then there's people that I would have never met otherwise. So Mindy Lyons, she's in the US.
I remember her.
Yeah, she's in the USA. And we met via socials, and I asked her to be on the show, and she was on the show. And one of the pieces of gold that she talks about is about imposter syndrome and how sometimes we have that. And she describes how imposter syndrome is bullshit. She doesn't say it like that, but that's how I'm phrasing it today, because it's about being your best self. So picture, imagine, write down, what would your best self be doing, thinking, and acting? And then you're on the way. And what can you do to be on the way to that? So it's not imposter syndrome, because you're not going to be that straight away. It's an aspiration. And that's okay as a human being to have aspirations to be your best self. It's got nothing to do with being an imposter. It's about being on your journey to be your best self. She describes it really well. Mindy Lyons, awesome piece of gold there. So I could go on with many, many. We've had over 50 episodes on the podcast, so there's so much. There's just a few that spring to mind, mate.
Yeah, I remember Alan Singer is someone that you and I both know well, who's also been on the show. He once said something like that to me as well, where there's where you aspire to be and where you are, and the difference is friction. And so you're dealing with the friction every day until you get to where you want to be, and that's all it is. So yeah, I resonate with that one.
And even though you might think it, and you think, oh, I'm an imposter because I'm not that yet and I'm trying to be, that is not an empowering thought to get you there.
No.
The mindset and the way to think about it is, I'm on my way to being my best self. I know what my best self looks like. I know what my best self does and thinks. And that's what I want to achieve. And that is inspirational. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you label it as imposter syndrome or you're an imposter, that's not empowering. That's not necessarily going to get you there.
Yeah, that's the glass half empty. Whereas what you're saying is glass half full. The positive change guy. I love it.
And how good is Alan Singer as well? I'm glad you mentioned him, because what a varied, wonderful life that he's led, and such a warm person to be around. You just feel really good in his presence. And, it's the only door-to-door encyclopedia salesman I've ever met. And
that you'd let open the door forever again. I remember after I heard his episode, I gave him the feedback that when it ended, I just went, "Oh, is that it?" Like I just wanted more. You'll have to have him back.
I'll have to have him back. Yeah, everyone loved Alan. And also, well, I must say, one of the episodes that I get a lot of feedback on is the interview I did with my daughter.
Wow.
So the interview I did with my daughter, Matisse, people say, wow, I can't believe, I think she was 10 at the time when I interviewed her. They say, I can't believe that this kind of conversation is coming out of a 10-year-old. And I got to say, I don't know if you'd call it an old soul or she's wise beyond her years or something, but there's something about that girl. And it was wonderful as a father, there's how many fathers and daughters would sit down and interview style and say, what's important to you? How do you look after yourself? What's greatness for you? All this kind of stuff. So it's actually something that I would encourage, to do with whatever gender your kids are. But I think it's really important for positive male role models with the fathers with their daughters to inquire and be really interested and ask those kind of questions, because you'll be so surprised at the answers. And through this podcast, I was able to do that, record it, and I've got it there for years. Imagine when she's 20, 30, 40 years old and she can go back and hear her and her dad having a chat about greatness when she was 10. Just love that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Love it. That's a wrap for this week's episode of Rise and Thrive Conversations for Greatness. But hang on, in part 2 of this interview, we'll dive deeper into the mindset of John Merkus, talking about embracing positivity, change, and the wisdom gained along the way. You're not going to want to miss this episode. See you next week.
Nice one, Aaron. That went so quick. I loved it. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us on Rise and Thrive Conversations for Greatness with John Merkus. Remember, you are loved, you are worthy, and you do matter. Embrace the journey of personal growth and motivation. Let's go out there and do something great. Follow or subscribe for more insights and inspiration every Tuesday. Until next time, stay awesome.